Welcome back to the Simplified Senior Transitions podcast, the show that brings you real stories, expert guidance, and trusted resources to help families navigate senior living with confidence. I'm your host, Dale Corpus, a senior transition specialist and real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm also part of the sandwich generation, just like many of you, juggling work, raising kids, and figuring out the best option for aging parents. That's exactly why I started this podcast. Finding trustworthy answers and resources can feel overwhelming and fragmented, so I created this show to bring everything into one place. Today's guest is someone who brings calm, clarity, and deep experience to a world that can feel chaotic. Patricia Maxwell. She's a licensed care manager, founder of Maxwell Senior Care Services, and the visionary behind Foster City Village, a neighbor helping neighbor initiative that supports seniors aging in place. With decades of experience in geriatrics and patient advocacy, Patricia Maxwell works with families to coordinate medical care, prevent crisis situations, and design holistic care plans that preserve a senior's independence and dignity. We're going to talk about what care management really looks like behind the scenes and why it might be one of the best decisions a family can make when navigating elder care. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And we're back, everybody. Patricia, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great.
Looking forward to our chat.
I am too. I appreciate bringing you on. And let's start with your story. How did you get into care management?
Well, it's a fairly long story, but I'll keep it very short. When I came here to the United States, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I ended up working in a small clinic here in Foster City, and then I transferred into a home care agency and really found that there was so many things there that I wasn't happy with. And many of the people that I was working with, fiduciaries, care managers, and so on, all suggested that I might like to change what I was doing. So I looked at the care management situation. I really hadn't got a clue at that time what I was getting myself into. And I started. I was in the situation that I had planned to be an intern with another agency to learn the ropes. Well, that fell apart, and I was already scheduled to do a weekend at a fair with two fiduciary colleagues of mine. And my husband said, let's do it. He put together a program for me, a flyer, and my business cards, and off we went. I've learned a lot since I first started. I really didn't know too much when I started, but I had a background of nursing and a fairly level head on my shoulders, and so that's where I was. That's my start.
Okay. Now, can you tell us about Maxwell Senior Care Services and the mission behind it?
The mission is all about service. Having the fact that I'm a Brit and I was trained in the UK, the whole idea of people having to pay for care was a very foreign one to me.
Okay.
The care manager that took me under her wing told me to get over it because this is just how the things were here in the United States. And so it's always been about service and advocacy for the elders, those who are more vulnerable, the infirm, etc., etc. And that's where we started out. And I started off as a one-person deal. When my husband decided to retire, I said, don't think you're going to sit there. I could do it with your assistance. So he now works for me. And I've expanded from being just one person into having staff. So I have another care manager at the moment who's brilliant. And I have a nurse, an RN that I do medication management with. And they are my go-to gals. They're a lot younger than I am. They are a lot more energetic than I am, but we work very well together, and we give 24-hour care. So if you call in the middle of the night, you get my dulcet tones or Christina's, and we try to set that things right in the night, or we have to go out. That's the way it is. So we do everything a daughter or son or any other relative would do, with more professional knowledge and more resources. And we are the biggest advocates anyone could wish for.
Nice. Now, you also founded Foster City Village.
I did.
What inspired you to start that community-driven initiative?
Well, having done this job for a while, I realized that people who are financially poor do get many things given to them, and they have a lot of resources. The rich, of course, don't need anything because they can afford it. But the people in the middle, people like you and I, really were at a loss. And in Foster City, we have quite a large Asian community who are cash rich but house poor, or house rich and cash poor, rather, get it the right way around. And many of them are now single in these huge houses. That causes a number of different issues. We've got people who are hoarding, people who are depressed, people who are lonely. They don't see or speak to anyone from one day to the next unless they get meals dropped off. And then it's only for a few seconds. How could we help to support them? So I went to an event in 2008 with Senior Roundtable in Silicon Valley, and I heard these two ladies, one from Avenidas and one from San Francisco, talking about their villages. And I really liked that idea. And it really lent itself to Foster City because we are a planned community. When we say Foster City, we actually mean the whole area code of 94404, which takes in part of San Mateo also. And we talked about this. And I was a Rotarian at the time. I got a lot of my Rotarian buddies to kind of pitch in and help out and so forth. And we really did this by the skin of our pants. We didn't know what we were doing. I'd never done a nonprofit before. But somehow or other, we did get assistance from various people. Lee Michelson from Sequoia Health Trust, who was then there, now retired, was very, very helpful. The other two villages were also very helpful. And we eventually got a nonprofit status, and 12 years later, we're still in being. We provide drivers, we provide exercises, we provide home activities such as services, tech services, little simple things like helping with walking the dog or doing a bit of garden work or fixing something or just putting the light here, smoke detectors, etc., which are always so high up, changing light bulbs that are way up. Anything that will help the senior to live comfortably with quality of life. And that's what our notion is. We provide all sorts of things for them to do, exercises, learning hour, walk and talk, book club, games of different sorts, you name it, we're doing it.
Got it.
And anything that they want, and there's enough of them that can continue it, we will try and provide for them. We're almost totally volunteer run. We've only got one person we pay, and that's the lady in the office, who's an absolute godsend. So we have a good team. I'm on the board. We have a hands-on working board. We all have a role to play. And so far, so good. We've done quite well. And we spawned two other villages, Mid-Penn, which was San Mateo, Burlingame, and Hillsborough, and then Sequoia Village, which was Belmont, San Carlos, Redwood Shores, and Redwood City. They've now all gotten together in a hub and spoke kind of deal, and are now the villages of San Mateo County, except we're not part of them. And yet we were the first village in San Mateo County. But that's another story.
A related question, what does the neighbors helping neighbors mean in practice for your work?
Okay, so for the village, neighbors helping neighbors is really because people who are in the 94404 area code are volunteers and who are there for the other people within their community. The board, I think all of us but one are Foster City residents.
Okay.
Many of our volunteers are from Foster City or surrounding San Mateo or somewhere like that. So really, we are neighbors helping our neighbor, and we're there for advice and anything that they need. We will try and help them with, and they pay a membership fee. Now, in Foster City or the 94404 area code, it's $1 a day for full service, which is amazing. We have like 3 stratas, those who need everything done for them, which is the $1 a day deal.
Yeah.
The associates who like the idea but don't need any of the services, but they can join the exercise class, they can go to the parties, picnics, whatever. Then we have a form of scholarship. You might not know this, but Foster City has a number of low-income housing, and we those sort of people have obviously filled the criteria for those places. We then have a scholarship for those folks who can't afford us.
Okay. Got it. Now, you described your work as ethical care rooted in dignity. What does that look like day to day?
Every individual we care for within the Maxwell Senior Care Services is an individual with a personality of their own. We treat each and everyone with dignity. We provide them with as much independence as they are safely able to do. We help them in every way possible. And we give a lot of advice and options to family members so that they can make intelligent decisions. We do not make the decisions. We're not there to make the decisions, but we are there to support families and the elder in their needs and providing quality of care. I mean, sitting in front of a TV waiting for that time when you go on to another place is not what we want to see. We want to see people actively engaged as much as they can be, and we promote that considerably. We work with a lot of different entities that now, after 19 years I've been in this business, we've gotten to know a number of people who we feel have the same ethnicity and the same feeling and the same ethics that we have. It's all about service above self. And I'm a long-time Rotarian, so service above self comes as part of my person, who I am. And so we do everything, really. I mean, it's amazing what we do. I mean, I've found cats for people.
Wow.
I've rehomed animals. I've even helped to sell a property. I've furnished a property. I go to the doctors and I argue the toss with the doctors because it's what I think is more important to the family or to the individual client. And we need to understand they're not patients. They're not our patients. They're our clients. And we take our job very seriously. We advocate for them all the time. And you know through your services how difficult it is for an elder to manage sometimes. It's confusing, it's overwhelming, and the families really sometimes are torn apart by all of this. You know, you've got a young mother with children who need to go to this thing or that thing or whatever, a husband who expects to have a meal when he comes back from work, who have to work themselves. How can they split themselves 5 ways from Sunday? They can't. And so having people like us helps to relieve some of that load, take the pressure off them, gives them peace of mind. We also work with people who are out of state. I had a client one time whose family were all in Australia. Thank God for texting. That's all I can say. We did a lot of that. And when I was going with individual to the doctors, I was able to tell them exactly what was going on. When they went into emergency room, we were able to tell them in real time what was going on and give them names of doctors and phone numbers that they could actually connect with them if they needed to do so. So we really were, we're like the person that puts all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Right. So right now I want to segue into more questions specifically about care management. Let's call this section Care Management 101, because a lot of people listening to this show, and myself included, we don't necessarily know fully what a care manager does. In fact, I just learned about the term care manager earlier on this year. So for listeners who haven't heard of a care manager, what exactly do you do?
Well, I think when I get a phone call, somebody, I listen to what the issues are, what the goals are, and I get as much information as I can at the start in order to be able to help with ideas, options, and suggestions. We do assessments. We will go out and assess somebody. We'll find out a little bit of who they were, what they like to do, what they like to do now, what they're able to do now. We find out about their medications and their medical doctors, their different diagnoses. Because I come from the nursing background, these things are important to me. We try to find out what level of education they have, because it helps us to understand what their capability is. We ask them what they want for themselves, if they can actually tell us. And keeping in mind that our clients, it's a mixed bag of different things. It's not all dementia. And if it's dementia, there's various different levels of the dementia. And it's not just Alzheimer's or whatever, because that's all part of being dementia. So it's just one part of it. There's all sorts of there, Lewy body and so on. It's a lot to go into, and I'm not going to take time to do that now. But
Right.
I do feel that, and we deal with Parkinson's, and we deal with stroke victims, and we deal with people with heart issues. We deal with all sorts of things. Really, it's very mixed. I have currently about four mental health clients. I don't take on too many because it's more time consuming. But we do need to be aware that they also need a lot of help. We also deal with people from the LGBTQ, and we manage those sort of things that they are concerned about and treating them the way they wish to be treated. We deal with a lot of solo agers. People are aging now that don't have family or children or anybody nearby, or they may have outlived their friends and family. We help them to kind of get their ducks in a row. They're prepared for when something happens. We don't want them to have a crisis and not be prepared. So we advise on various things, whether it be legal, whether it be financial. We just advise and give options. We don't make those decisions for them.
So then what types of families benefit most from hiring someone like you?
Anyone who needs help, who's overwhelmed, who needs somebody there to tell them they're doing it right or not, we are those folks who will help them with that. We have 3 streams in our office. We do full care management. We do medication management on its own, because sometimes that's all that's needed and they don't need the care management side of things. And we also do consultations. We have a consultation practice now, because there's a lot of people who know what they're doing, what they think they do, and then they just want to be told that they're doing it right. Or if they find themselves in a bit of a pickle, they come to us and say, well, what can we do to get us out of this pickle? That kind of thing. And I'm not treating this lightly, but it's a very heavy, very overwhelming, very mentally traumatizing situation to be in when you have an elder that you're taking care of. And they come in various shapes and sizes and at various stages. And cognitive impairment as a whole is a very horrible thing.
Yeah. Now, how is a care manager different from a social worker or home care agency?
Let me answer the second one first. We are different from a care agency because we are more like project managers for an elder. We bring in the resources. So caregiving is a resource. Money managers are a resource. Medication management is a resource. Organizers, financial advisors, attorneys, all of those people we bring in. The caregiving agency is looking after the day-to-day caregiving, and they are the salt of the earth, and we monitor them. I make it my business to have relationships with different companies that I get along with, so that when I say jump, they'll jump, or they provide the need that I need, or if I'm not happy, they'll sort it out without any issue. That is so much better for my clients. It allows for transition, much an easier transition. And we do everything we can to make things as relaxed and as simple as possible. With families who need to place their parents or their relative, we always advise to make it temporary. Yeah. Nobody wants to know that they're going to be stuck in a situation that they don't want to be in. Well, and none of us do change very well, especially when we're getting older. So if we make it temporary and we just say, you're going to be here a short while. Yes, it's not exactly true, but it's not exactly wrong. We're doing it because the betterment of that individual. And once they've been somewhere for 2 or 3 months, they've gotten used to it. They've gotten friends. They've made friends. They like the regularity of activity. And so they settle in and they've basically forgotten that it was only going to be temporary. And it makes it all round a lot more comfortable and safer for everybody.
Got it. And how about the difference between a social worker versus what a care manager does?
Well, first of all, they're trained to know a lot more about what's out there and how they manage situations. But we do a lot of what is known as almost social work. But I refer out to social workers often, and I get referrals from social workers. We border on each other. Okay. I'm not a licensed social worker, and I haven't had the training of that, but I have my background of 30 years of nursing.
Okay. Now, can you give an example of a situation where your involvement prevented a crisis?
Yes, I can do that. I had a little lady in Santa Clara County who had multiple sclerosis. And she was in a community, and we've been brought on board by the attorney and friend, and everything was going quite well. And then she began to decline in health. So we got a caregiver to come in and be with her in the community. And then the little lady started getting calls from her one and only son asking for money. Yeah. And these calls were coming in late at night, early in the morning, when the individual was at her lowest ebb. She was tired, or she was not really groggy from being asleep. But if it hadn't been for the caregiver, we wouldn't have known about it. And he wanted to have a lot of money. He borrowed money from his in-laws. He was American, but married to a Japanese lady. Mm-hmm. They were living in Japan, and he then had to pay back his in-laws. They wanted the money back, and he couldn't do it. So then he turns up and wants to be with his mother, and kind of surprised that she's got a caregiver in with her, so he can't actually stay with her. And that was a godsend, but he did try and get large amounts of money from his mother, and I worked with the trustee at the bank. With the trustee, closed off all her accounts. We informed the DA. We informed APS. We informed the fraud squad. And on a Friday afternoon at 3:30, which is almost unheard of, we got a temporary injunction against the son and a temporary conservatorship for the mother, so she was safeguarded.
Okay. Wow, you managed a lot there. So there's a lot of moving parts, but you were able to kind of just, direct everything where it needs to go. Now, I know you work with a lot of families. Family dynamics can get complicated. How do you help navigate disagreements or denial about care needs?
I don't know. I think it must be British voice. I sound a bit like the nanny. And so people tend to listen. And I think that because I have been around for a little while, it's knowing the psychology of managing situations. I'm not trained at it, but it seems to come naturally. And we try to remind the individuals that it's not them that are important. It's the individual we're taking care of, that we're there for them. And what they're doing is making life more difficult for them and is costing them a lot more money that could be for their best interests. If that doesn't work, then sometimes we have to get a mediator in place.
Okay.
But we try to do what we can. And I think by example and with encouragement and help and being able to respond to families and they begin to trust you, it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Now, what are some common red flags you see that families tend to overlook?
They're not just one, there's several of them. First of all, I think it's in this day and age, we have to be worried about well-meaning friends.
Yeah.
They want to help, but just because Uncle so-and-so had so-and-so come and help them and they did a wonderful job doesn't necessarily mean that that person's going to do a wonderful job for somebody else. Everyone has their own quirks and personalities, and we need to be aware of some of those things and choose the people who will fit in with that lifestyle better. Also, family members, and we've come across this quite a bit, are not doing well elsewhere, and they come and kind of dump themselves on mom and dad and live off them. Now, that's a form of abuse, and people don't realize that. We do deal with abuse. We deal with more than I'd like to admit to. And it's mostly financial.
Now, you often advocate for clients in medical settings. What does that look like?
Well, the doctors in 15 minutes for their patients.
Right.
We know that patient so well by the time we got them there. We see them at home. We know the family. We know how it's working. And oftentimes the doctors will not pay attention or listen to the elder. And there's nothing worse than having a doctor look at the elder and then talk to the person behind them. It happens a lot. And with elders, 15 minutes doesn't really work too well because they've got more than one issue and they need to be heard. And that doesn't happen too often. So we're there to direct the doctor. I mean, oftentimes I've said to the doctor, I said, would you mind talking to the patient? She's here. And said, I'm just going to be here as her second set of ears and will answer for her when she can't manage it. And that's the difference. That's where we are. It's a subject. It's very tricky. There's a sense of ageism around. And when you get to a certain age, you're considered to be past it. Whether you are or not is another matter. And very often elders are just slow. They need to process things and they can't be rushed. And I don't think they should be rushing them. And so 15 minutes is really not a good time. But so we're there to redirect. And normally I'll make note of each of the issues and just hand it to the doctor and say, these are the issues. And that helps them also to manage those situations. The other thing, of course, is you give a client a medication, especially an elder, and sometimes they react a little bit to those medications. But then what do? The doctor will give them another medication to help with the reaction. They won't change the medication they're on or realize that that's not the one they should be having very often. And then they come away with a whole slew of medications, which in itself is not good because medication often are the reason for falls.
Yeah.
And people don't think about that. So we do try and leave some of those, try and stop that, say, doctor, well, why don't we do, and, sometimes a little knowledge is a very bad thing. And having been in the nursing profession for many years, I have been known to be difficult with doctors. Not intentionally, but it's on behalf of my client. And so if you're giving her one medication for blood pressure, and then you're giving her another medication for blood pressure, and then you're giving her a diuretic, and then we find that they have syncope, a form of fainting. And I had that issue with a client once before, and the doctor wouldn't change. And so when we went to the emergency room for about the fourth or fifth time, I said to the emergency doctor, this is what I think. She had some of those medications changed, and the woman never had syncope again, and we didn't go back to that doctor again, obviously. So, it's just, we've got to be aware of these things. And we have to manage it. And yes, we may be a bit bulldogish, but we're there in the best interest of the elder. And that's what they pay us for God's sake, And we're there to do what they can for them and make their lives better, not to make lives more difficult.
Yeah.
And we liaise with not only hospitals, social workers, case managers. We go in with our clients to the hospitals to meet with the case managers and talk to them about things when they all talk to us. We also go in and talk to social workers. And we really want to be a part of a team because we feel that as a team, we do the best for the individual.
Yeah, I like that. What advice do you have for families trying to make sense of multiple diagnoses or specialists?
As much as they want to help, sometimes it's best to stand back and let somebody else do it. When you come to care management, very often I call it one-stop shopping. Because we do the assessment and we make suggestions and give options, and we then monitor the things that we've suggested. We will advise that the individual needs more engagement, and she either goes to an adult daycare center, which can also reduce the cost of care a little bit. We also suggest maybe they use some other form of engagement like Hummingbird, the Hummingbird project, or Engage as You Age, because they come in and they spend time with the individual and they engage them in conversations that they can do or in activities they can do. Hummingbird is a wonderful, wonderful group of people that we work with. They are activity specialists and they are a godsend. So we use them quite often. And then, of course, we then look at various places where mom and dad can go, or we try to put things in place so that they can stay at home. We all want to be in our own homes, but sometimes it's not physically possible. It's not safe. They can't afford the care. And so we have to look at other options. And there are so many options out there.
Yeah. I want to segue into questions related to building a care plan. First question here is, what goes into creating a successful long-term care plan?
Well, I found that even if you start a care plan, you're going to change it frequently. So long term is not exactly going to be there because you do change it according to the ability of the individual. So if there's a decline, you change your care plan. Or if there's something happened to that individual, you're going to change the care plan to match it. Um, Once you've done your assessment, you come up with an idea of what would work best for the individual. You see that they need certain things, and you may start off with the very little. They just need somebody to cook for them or to drive them somewhere. And as things to go on and they decline in ability, then you need somebody who's going to be there to help with bathing. You're going to help with dressing, with changing, all of those things. So that plan changes with the individual. So it's difficult to say you have a long-term. Your long-term plan is to work on the quality of life of the elder, provide them with a safe situation and lots of engagement. And so you go to things that are going to give them engagement. So and it's not always the wonderful looking hotel like structures that are out there. Sometimes you want to go somewhere which is smaller, not exactly a board and care, but smaller, where the individual is seen more often and more time is given to each one of them. And there are such places. And I use placement agencies and individuals, but I also tell them what it is I would like for my client. So I kind of monitor some of that.
Okay. How do you coordinate with other professionals like attorneys, fiduciaries, or realtors?
Well, actually, we coordinate quite often with them. Attorneys refer people to me, so do fiduciaries. And occasionally, well, I've worked with 2 realtors because I've had to help buy a house and had to sell a house. And so, yes, we work with them. We work with anyone that will work with us. And generally, I keep a database of 3 of everything.
Okay.
I pride myself in being able to get most things in the house except for a CT scan and an MRI. So we can get dentists into the house. Oh, and I'm also having problems getting an eye doctor into the house. But for the rest of it, you can get in-house. I've got dentists will go into the home. I've got dental hygienists will go in home. Blood work can be done at home. Ultrasounds can be done at the home. X-rays can be done at home. All that kind of stuff. So you keep a database of all those.
Yeah.
And because I've been doing this so long, I put it all onto a system that we use in our business called Dropbox. And so that my staff can look in there and say, oh, okay, we're supposed to refer to these people until we change another time. We can update them as things come and go. You know, this is an ever-changing field.
Right. Now, what role do you play when a senior wants to age in place safely?
Well, we will help them to age in place safely if they can afford it. We do safety checks and we work with people who can do safety checks within the home. We make sure that they've got everything that can stop them from falling in the bathroom. We sometimes use companies that do like AI and overnight so that they can to help to reduce the cost of an overnight sitter when the individual has a set routine. They can work well with that. So we do all sorts of things in order to make sure the individual is safe within the home. It's the safety issue is the whole thing. It's really important to keep, and that they can afford the high cost of care.
When is it time to explore assisted living or memory care options?
When it's no longer safe in the home. I mean, that's a broad thing. Each and every person is an individual in their own right, and we take into consideration what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how it's affecting the family members.
Okay.
Can they afford to have care in the home? And keeping in mind that trying to get care for 4 hours a day is almost nigh impossible. Like now that people want to work longer hours because the cost of living is so high here.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 6, 8, 12-hour shifts. Now, if you go into 12-hour shifts, you're paying overtime. If you do an 8-hour shift, you just about manage to do it without overtime. So you look at combinations also. What the family can do comfortably. Can you use an adult daycare center like Rosner House so that reduces the need for caregiving between the hours of 9 and 3, for instance? And then if there's a family member who can take on a weekend or a part of a weekend and keep those costs down, and if there's someone who's willing to live in the house and be there in case of nighttime. So it's really a matter of looking at the family ability versus what they can afford.
Now, what's the emotional toll on family caregivers, and how do you help them avoid burnout?
The toll is huge, sadly. I think because we live in a very expensive area, the cost of everything that you need is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever said it, that getting old were the golden years lied. They're not the golden years anymore. I think that what we can do to alleviate and provide peace of mind, yes, we do it at a cost, but we save people money. We save them from making big mistakes. We save them from trying to do too much because there's always that guilt factor. I had it with my own parent. I wanted to have him admitted to a hospital. We had geriatric hospitals in those days.
Okay.
I felt really guilty about doing that. And yet I knew I was doing the right thing. But that really has a toll on you. And when you think that the person taking care of the elder is old themselves, that's very trying. That the stress is enough to kill them. And oftentimes the elder who was taking care of the other will go first. So we try to avoid some of that. We try to be as helpful as we can. We look at various options. We try to work out something with the family, given that not everyone has a family. We do all sorts of things. It's we walk a very fine line between what is needed and what's afforded. Care managers do that all the time. And just because we feel that the individual needs to have this, they can't always afford it. So what can we do to alleviate some of that cost? And how can we work around things?
Now, what's the biggest misconception people have about what you do?
But now, where shall I start? I don't think people really know what it is we do because we are our worst own enemies. We do not get out there and tell people who we are. And the reason for doing that is that many of my colleagues are single owners, businesses, and they can't do all of these other things. They're busy looking after clients. I'm fortunate that I have staff.
Yeah.
So whilst I'm doing something like this, my staff are taking care of everything that's going on. So, but we don't advertise ourselves. And although I belong to an association of aging life care associates, I don't know who sold them that name, but it's very different from geriatric care managers, which you knew what you were doing with those. But it is what it is. And I'm glad I belong to the association, but we don't sell ourselves really well.
Okay. Now,
We could save so many people, so many periods of disaster and anxiety and stress and all of the things in between. We could save them that.
okay. what's the most important thing you want families to understand about care planning?
As far as I'm concerned, if it's not good enough for me, it's not good enough for my clients. And that's the whole thing that I work on. And I'm not easy. And so I like to have the best of everything. Not that I can afford the best of everything, but I'd like to have that. And so I try to do the best of everything for my clients. And my staff do the same thing. They are extraordinarily good. And we all have a lot of feeling for our job. We've had parents. We've had other people that we've had to look after. And that's why we're doing what we do with the passion that we do it.
Can you share a moment that was especially meaningful or emotional in your work?
I've had many moments like that. You get very attached to your clients, especially when you've had them a while. And there was one particular little lady that I took on. Her cousin was out of state. And we really did a lot of things for her. When we first met her, she was in independent living, but she couldn't be independent. So we moved her into a sister company was next door, and that was assisted living. And we had her there. We moved her cat with her. And we got very close with her. She was a sweet little lady. And it was during the time of COVID, and she was doing really well. And then one day she wasn't feeling very well, and we took her into the hospital, and she passed away that night. I was devastated, absolutely, totally devastated. I felt that we had let her down. There was so much more we could have done for her. But in point of fact, there was not really much we could do about it. She didn't have the stamina to fight off the illness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do what you can. I mean, yeah.
Yes, and we do. I mean, it's a sad thing, but I've been to funerals when I and the caregivers have been crying and the family members have not. That's a sad thing.
What keeps you personally motivated to keep doing this work?
The fact that I'm doing the best I can for an elder who needs me.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of topics. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't yet? Any final words?
I truly can't think of anything offhand. Oh, yes, we are 24/7. If you call in the middle of the night, you get my dulcet tones. You don't get a machine. If I don't answer immediately, I'll call back. If I'm not on call, my message will say that Christina's on call, and they should call Christina. We are the two that cover the on-calls.
Yeah.
We are available for emergencies all hours of the day and night and weekends.
Geographically, what areas do you cover in the Bay Area?
Currently, we're covering Millbrae all the way through to Willow Glen.
Okay, down to San Jose.
And we've got a client in Los Gatos. We have one in Almaden area too. It's a little far for us, but the family and the fiduciary were comfortable with us because the neighbors who were the POAs were close by and could take on what we couldn't get if we weren't there and, straight away if there was a crisis. Our eldest client is 102. Youngest is in her 60s, I think. And we have a small core of people we see weekly. Then we have people we see every 2 weeks. So we need, whenever they need us, they see us. And for our solo agents, I check in with them once a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And finally, how can people get in touch with you if they'd like your help or want to learn more about your services?
Well, my office number is 650-373-2145. If it's an emergent and they're trying to get hold of me during the weekend or after hours, my cell phone is 650-218-5685. 5234. They can text me
Okay.
on that number, and I have an email which they can also get off my website. My website is www.maxwellseniorcare.com, and that's who we are.
Perfect. Patricia, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I'm really grateful for how you show up with such compassion, integrity, and practical wisdom for families in one of the most difficult chapters of their lives. What you share today will help so many people feel less overwhelmed and more empowered. And for those of you watching or listening, if your loved one is considering senior living and you need to figure out what to do with their home, let's chat. Schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on the Calendly link in the description box below. Learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com or send me a quick DM on Instagram at SoldByDale. If you found this interview helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps more families find this show. And don't forget to share this episode with someone who could use the guidance. Thanks again for tuning in. One last thanks again to Patricia for joining me on this episode. And I'll see you all in the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.